Good morning, everyone. Anthony Tharp again. Yet another insert. It's May 24th, 2023, and it's approximately 12:45 p.m. The day has been going by pretty fast. I thought I would have been done, gone from a walk and all of that, and getting a late start. However, good morning, and thanks for taking the time to listen, tune in, and share our thoughts on um, what's concerning us about our lives. Jamaica, we're so attached to Jamaica, obviously. It's where we're from, and we are dedicated to trying to see how we can make life better for all Jamaicans, whether they're in the diaspora or they're living on the island, whatever their dreams are, whether they intend to stay on the island voluntarily or not. They can leave, why they should leave, opportunities out there, and create a Jamaica so that they can return. As well as while they're out there, they'll see Jamaica as a viable option for investment, meaning building the country so that we always have that option of returning or going home if we so deem it necessary. Because frankly, we don't know what's happening or what will happen or could happen in the places we now live as people in the diaspora. Anything could happen. We shouldn't be so naive to think that um, the stability that we now enjoy and relatively calm. And I say relatively because every country has its problems, and the US is no different. However, the important thing is that the residents and people who live in the US and other countries, civilized countries, must find civil ways to work out those issues and to ensure that's the only thing that's going to ensure longevity of a nation. If you look at history, there's been many nations. Some we don't even have in recorded history. We know they existed. We've lost all records of them, but they were great nations. The achievements are obvious, and in fact, some of them we can't even figure out how they did certain things. We're still pondering, and we consider ourselves the most amongst the most advanced humans that ever existed on planet Earth. Now, of course, I think that's debatable. I think we've also come to acknowledge that catastrophes have happened on the planet, on Earth. So those civilizations were destroyed. And it's important for us to recognize that that could happen again, whether it's natural disasters or man made. But the reality is, it could happen. And so when we think about our lives and planning ahead, we know our timeline on the planet is limited. And we need to prepare so that the extensions of ourselves, our children, will be able to survive and live the best life possible on the planet. Maintain as long as you have children, you're alive. Biology teaches that. So even if you don't recognize the fact that your survival long into the future is dependent on whether you have children or not and how they survive. Remember, your children are made up of you. And at some point down the road, you might just come popping out again. Never know. But the reality is, we have a responsibility. And yesterday I mentioned that one of the things we must do as Jamaicans, as people who live within a community, whether in the US, Jamaica, wherever we live, we have a duty and a responsibility to play a role in what happens in the areas we live, just to ensure that people understand that we have a right to be here. And so we shouldn't be limited by persons who deem it otherwise. They have no more rights than you, even though they might try to enforce that. It's for us to stand up, and numbers make a difference. So I'm going to be addressing this morning. I was listening some YouTube pronouncements last night on some of these blogs, and I spent a lot of time last night on the blog where Mr. Radigan and about four other people. I know there was a young person, a young man, Mr. Cook, I think. Cook, yeah, Cook. There was a gentleman. Well, the majority seemed to be out of Florida, and the host. But a particular blog, they discussed a lot of things last night, specifically concerning the Constitution of Jamaica. And what most of us should realize now is that the actions of the Prime Minister and his government, his ministers, triggered literally intellectual revolution of what um, thoughts we need to put into play or place to ensure that we don't breed dictators on the island, and that we can't wait too long to take action to eliminate that. And so the whole salary thing that came out there was just one of the things that triggered a lot of discussions around even the constitution that they've been considering to amend the constitution. And of course, I've always maintained that we don't need to rush to change the constitution, because I kind of picked up on this need, this desire to rush to change the constitution. And the constitution is a document that represents how we can live within a country, what rights we have within that country, and what other people can or can't do against you. It's a sovereign document over a sovereign people. And so we need to be very careful of how we approach this whole thing about the Constitution. It can't be rushed. And it can't be a constitution that's amended by a handful of people. Jamaica is said to have about 3 million people on the island. I think it's more, because the data and the gathering of the data is has never been accurate. But let's say it's 3 million. We have under 200 people in government and the parliament. Seems like it's going to be raining soon. I hear a lot of things in the background. It's definitely overcast, and you can hear the so that's it. So we're talking about a handful of people. Let's say the central government is made up of 100 people, 200 people max. Are you going to tell me that you're comfortable with 200 people sitting in a room and deciding on what your future should be? And we're talking about politicians who have put themselves out there. And one of the things we've learned about politicians in Jamaica and their politics and how they operate is that they are self serving. So, in other words, you have 200 people that belong to one political organization or two that pretty much share the same philosophy, made up of the same kind of people with the same kind of thinking, self serving, only about themselves, not about the nation. And then those are the people that you are going to allow to sit in a room, keep all kind of secrets from us, and make a decision of how your life is going to be governed or run, or about your children, your family, your friends, your country. I think that's most inappropriate. And of course, we get that kind of thing because there's no respect for the people. We have politicians who are elected, and somehow they've convinced themselves that they're some super person or God, that they are the ones that will dictate everything to the people who put them in office. Of course, you know the answer to that. That's not what the democracy democracy of our country states or stands for. And the Constitution certainly does not state anything of the kind. However, because of the construction of the Constitution, these people have been taking advantage of loopholes, ambiguities, and simple things that just does not work in favor of a national economy or country. And so in now us having this intellectual revolution and discussions around constitutionality and constitution and the laws that govern the country and our rights, fundamental charter of fundamental rights and freedoms, we need to be very careful and not just be callously irresponsible. You need to play a part. We need to play a part. And we need to encourage everybody that's on the island, from the smallest kid, play a part to understand what's happening so that when they grow up and become the decision makers of their families, they know exactly that it means they have to play a role because it's important. They must decide on what's good for them and what isn't. So we need to really put our minds, wrap our minds around this whole constitutional issues. And as I said yesterday in yesterday's video, the reality is not just about the salary of parliamentarians. The fact is, there's a whole lot going on, and that just triggered us to recognize that we need to act and we need to act decisively. So, going back to what I was listening to last night on some of these blogs, and pretty much the focus with Mr. Radigan, I think, and his group of bloggers, contributors to this discussion pertains to the Constitution, and there are questions raised about the Constitution. And I got the impression that though everybody there saw the importance of what they were discussing and actually the necessity of amending the Constitution, it seemed there was a lot of hesitance for people to become proactively um, involved with actual managing the process of getting us there, or finding out how to bring people on board to stimulate Jamaicans to understand that they must play a role. I think the focus was on just having the discussions, and then nothing is going to happen. And I think we've had these discussions in the past where we have a whole lot of discussions around certain issues, especially this constitutional issue, and nothing happens because it gets thrown into committees within the government and nothing happens. And that's why I'm saying to you now that you have a role that you should rise up and share the information from this video to your friends, your family, whether they're on the island or off the island, that we need to get together online, in open, in public, and have these discussions. We need to organize. So, those of you who are involved in management, best management practices in business, whether you're studying, whether you're actually running a business, you're working in a corporate entity or another business, and you have the training and the skill, then we want to say to you, don't just sit by and listen to the discussions. I'm saying to you, start organizing, start putting your thoughts together. How can we rally all these Jamaicans around a central idea that the Constitution must be amended and changed? And not just change for change's sake, not just change to appoint a president. Because I don't even know if we should even use the term president. Because again, it connotes this idea that these elected officials, the politicians we put in, go in there and abuse those offices because for some reason there's overreaching or overarching idea that once they're in office, they're better than everybody else. And in fact, the people work for them, and the activities of the people surround them being successful, and the people who put them in there to empower the nation. are the people who ultimately suffer. And again, it's not just the people who have been duped with this whole salary thing. It's everybody in the nation. It's everybody outside the nation that's going to be feeling the brunt of this continual actions by politicians to feed their greed, to keep robbing the country, keep robbing the coffers of the country, and then simply sit there and say, "Oh, we're going vaccination to pay for this debt and for that debt." I think we are way more educated, way more sophisticated than allowing that to continue. Because if you don't understand that every time they suck money out of your pocket or they undermine your ability to invest in your country or invest elsewhere, they're hurting you and your family down the road. So you're not divorced from the effects of what these people have been doing. And the data I heard last night was about 30 odd percent of the Jamaican people participate in electing a government. Of course, the reason for that is because people don't believe it's important. It's not a priority for them to go vote because to them, they don't want to be involved. But we have to convince people no that this is their most important role as a citizen, a resident of the island of Jamaica, of this country that we say is sovereign. It is the most important role, sorry, because this is how the rest of their lives on the island are going to be affected or governed. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to have a new constitution that only brings in people who are going to be dictators. And that's the impression I'm getting. That if they're practicing that now, and they feel you don't have a right to make a decision about your future, about policy, about programs that they're working on, keeping secrets from the nation, then voting on issue and then throw it out there on your face in your face, then don't get involved. Don't do anything. Just sit there and see what happens. And I'm going to refer to a point in history that we should remember. And unfortunately, lots of Jamaicans, including educated ones, and including um, people who are out there influencing our children and the future Jamaica, is that in our history, during the period of quote unquote slavery and colonialism, we had internal wars going on. However, those wars were able to be sustained by the oppressors, the British, the Spanish, because those wars involve taking people, turning them into forced labor, so that we can generate an economy for them that empowered them, so they could build mansions in Europe. And in short, the whole slavery system. And all of that was going on. We have an island that the population was far more significant than the slave owners or the plantation owners. Yet, we had a population of grown men and women who sat there and took the abuse. Now, when there were those who didn't take the abuse or didn't want to take the abuse, rose up and said, "Listen, we're not staying here, we're going to leave." They got up and left. They went up in the hills. They fought for their freedom. They intermarried with natives. And so we have a group of people on the island and in South America and all over the Caribbean that are hybrids of Africans that came, Africans that were already in the Caribbean before Columbus got here, and natives who we refer to as Indians, Tainos, Caribs, you name it. They were here. We had interrelationships. They bred, they had people who also lived up in the hills. And those people are still carrying the genes of many of the Tainos, what we call earlier in our education, they say Arawak. Caribs, they actually are carrying those genes with us. Those people ran up in the hills and they formed communities that were later named Maroons and Maroon communities. And one of the problems I'm having with a lot of people is that they seem to take this whole idea that because Maroons took off in the hills, want their freedom, because nobody can give you freedom, want their freedom. They went up in the hills, and when they signed a treaty, a peace treaty, regardless of how mediocre the treaty was, or how trusting these persons were in signing that kind of treaty, they signed a treaty. And that treaty gave them an independent existence on the island, meaning an independent nation. That's what it spells. And a lot of people are upset and keep talking about it throughout history and going over it. That the Maroons now were traitors because the people who were running away from the plantations now, after they got won their freedom and established their communities, the same people who were sitting on these plantations, who didn't want to come out and fight, who didn't want to sacrifice themselves, a whole bunch of them started to run off and come into the Maroon countries and the Maroon lands. Some of them stayed, but the treaty had an extradition clause. The agreement said if other persons ran away after we signed this peace treaty, this agreement, then you have a responsibility to return them to us. It's probably the first extradition treaty that was ever signed in history between two people. So the Maroons signed a treaty to maintain their own freedom because they were faced with the problem of if we don't get this peace treaty or establish ourselves as a free people where we are protected, sooner or later their resources would probably run out. And there were those factors to consider. So in protecting themselves and their rights, and the people who took off from those plantations, who went up in the hills, established communities, fought the British, fought the Spanish, predominantly the British. Some of them died, lost their lives, willing to sacrifice. And them lazy, no good Africans who accepted slavery because they stayed on the plantation. When we called for burn down the plantation, they sit down in there and some of them go tell the master, so we're coming tonight, come burn down the plantation. And those are the same people and their descendants who are now in Jamaica and around the world talking about Maroons were traitors because they betrayed Africans who were slaves who refused to run off of the plantation. Because if those slaves on the plantation, and I call them slaves because they accepted the position of being slaves, free people don't accept that. Free people are warriors, they fight for the freedom. Nobody's gonna sit around who's a free person who know their right, allow somebody to come slap them in the face, take their freedom, abuse their family, rape their kids, rape their wife, and just take it and sit down and think it's okay. No free people. But we had a whole bunch of people who accepted it, accepted slavery. And so those people are still on the planet and their descendants talking about Maroons were traitors. Maroons are our biggest and most important symbol of freedom in the Caribbean, in Jamaica. That's what they represent. So it's important for us to ensure that this attitude, which I see coming out of this present government, because I hear them out and talking about Maroons don't have any sovereignty. They're going and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. No, you don't have the right to go in there because you never did anything to help establish a free country, a free sovereign nation. So not because they're weak now, or they don't have military armament, or because they're distracted and many of them are now integrated within the Jamaican society, both globally and international, I mean local and internationally. You so-called people who refuse to stand up and fight for your freedom are going to try and oppress these Maroons by taking their freedom. So any kind of constitutional reform we're talking about, and where it's being implied or suggested that the Maroons don't have this right, or their sovereignty. You can forget it. All of you who are out there preaching this nonsense, you need to suck it up and accept the fact that you and your ancestors were irresponsible. Never want to take responsibility for no freedom, or no rights. And when somebody has gone fight for it and won it, then you're going to now criticize them and talk about they were traitors. No, they weren't. And every Jamaican, whether you stayed on a plantation or not, at the end of slavery, when the so-called abolition of slavery came, the abolition of slavery came because there were people, the Maroons, not only in Jamaica, but throughout the islands. You had Maroons in other islands. You had Maroons in South America, Mexico. A lot of people don't know that Mexico took in the most of the Africans who came out of Africa as slaves. Mexico. A lot of people don't know that them dark skinned people you see in Mexico are African descendants. They might have straight hair, yes, but some of them have kinky hair, sorry, like us. They have straight hair like us, because we have Jamaicans with that, we have Africans with that. But the point I'm making is a lot of people don't understand that it was these Africans who knew they were free people, who didn't sit around and accept the nonsense. They went in, they took off, they fought these people. And it was because of those persons who set up independent nations around the Caribbean and within these slave territories, these plantation territories, that these Europeans realized that, you know what, we can sustain this long term. So because those people were out there and they didn't return all them people who ran away. You know. So don't fall for it because that's disinformation. But they returned some. And no, there's no documentation to say they returned 50 million over X, 5 million, 5,000. There's none. But again, people breed on that. They grow and they seed the nation with misinformation. So divide the Maroons from the rest of the population. And I said, guess what? A whole bunch of us have Maroon ancestry. A whole bunch of we. And we're also Jamaicans. Notice there's a distinction. We have Maroon, who happen to also be Jamaican because we were born in the sovereign state of Jamaica with Maroon ancestry. And one thing the Maroons have never done is to say, well, if you're born in the rest of the sovereign state of Jamaica, you lose your Maroon heritage. No. They were intelligent enough to know that they're not going to divorce themselves from their own people. And we need to establish that fact that we're not going to sit down and allow anybody to come into this debate about constitution and try to steal somebody else's country or somebody else's constitution. All right. What I suggested and will continue to suggest is that we have a sit down, we come up with policy and programs that work mutually to empower and build these people, build the Maroons, build the Jamaicans, and build an economy that we can signal to the rest of the world, people like us, that we can work together. This conquer and divide foolishness must stop. The whole Jamaican landscape has been destroyed and held back for decades because we had the conquer and divide strategy and mentality being used by our own Jamaicans. The whole existence of the PNP and JLP and all kind of P was designed to separate and conquer people. We had people setting up garrison communities just to maintain that distance between ourselves and our own people. So cousins live over us and cousins live over us and they're fighting each other because some person came in and put in their heads that you're different and that being a JLP makes you different from the person who's a PNP and your interests are different. And the divide and conquer strategy is that, you vote for me as a PNP or a JLP, I'm going to give some little special benefits. And the benefits that you're getting, the cooked food and the bread and the $3,000 for go vote. I hope you're realizing, and I'm saying this to everybody. There's a lot of you educated people out there now. A lot of us Jamaicans came out of those communities. Now you're educated. Now you're upwardly mobile. And you must go back and talk to your own people. Let your people know this is foolishness. You need to step up and tell your people, stop this nonsense about worshipping political parties and leaders. You can't make them be your gods. You can't allow them to come into your community and decide, wait, guess what? I'm going to give you some guns and you're going to shoot up your place and threaten everybody within your community with violence because somebody is going to come back and try to reprisal, take reprisal action for the foolishness. And who does it benefit? You ever see any of these political leaders who are engaged in destroying your country? You ever see any of them living in your community? How many of them leaders have houses in a Denham Town and Trench Town and Rima or wherever the place is? I only hear them names, I don't know where they are. No, well, I know where Trench Town is, I know where Denham Town is because I taught in Denham Town for a little bit. It was just teaching experience, but I taught in Denham Town for a couple of weeks. It was not much. But that said, you find any of them people living down there with you? The people are telling you to live this way, to kill your brother over the stuff, kill your cousin over the stuff, kill your friend over the stuff, instead of getting together and working to build a community. The lands you live on in those communities, you ever see them coming up and say, take the land you live on, build something that you could live in, maintain your family that looks good, decent, clean. You see any of them doing that? No. I think Jamaicans need to realize that they need to step up. So stop falling into this game of conquer and divide. I think that Europeans have been using for centuries to hold back people and hold back our people. That's how they got us out of Africa. They went in, they convinced some leaders to, you can get rid of that guy over there. He's been your problem. He's different from your tribe. You can get rid of him. Tonight, we're going to raid him, tie him up on camp, come give us on the boat, and we'll take him away. We give you some guns for it. Because the guns will help you go collect them. Your own people. So the concept of conquer and divide was planted, and we've been relying on that to maintain and manage ourselves as a people, so-called independent people. So that means we're not independent of thought. Because if we were thinking clearly, we would have said we're going to reject that kind of logic. We're going to reject that kind of political strategy. We're going to reject that kind of economic activity. Because all of it is related to money. How can I take money from these people and take their wealth, take it to my place where it's valuable, and then allow them not to recognize, say, listen, you can come out of this better than a couple guns. And it's the same thing happening. Where do you think all these guns coming from? Landing in the hands of people who can't even read. A lot of them can't read. They're uneducated. They went through school and nobody bothered to make sure before they graduate or leave school they could read and write. As long as they pass through and we have them on record, that's fine. Teachers can't be bothered. And it goes back to the same thing. We're underpaying teachers, overworking them, and then we expect them to do all of this? No. Just going to sit down and pass time and mark time, collect what they can. And the people who genuinely want to teach only going to focus on the people who come there to learn. Or the parents of those people insist that their kids get educated. 'Cause that's the other thing. A whole bunch of people who grew up this way, grew up in the system, and they fall right into the trap of repeating it. History repeats itself. So the same thing they did for themselves, they allow them kids to fall into that same trap. And so we have this generational effect of a country that cannot get better because of how people act and think because of education and their exposure and their constant reliance on people who only want to abuse them. Again, there are a number of issues, and I'm saying all of this to point out to you this whole scenario and thing that's been going on for the last couple of days now, weeks, maybe 2 weeks, about the brazen disregard for the country's interests by the Prime Minister and the politicians. And I say the politicians now because I'm including the leaders of the opposition and the opposition party. Because them collect the money and we don't hear nothing about them saying they're going to give it back or we're rejecting it. They're quiet. Why? You need to give back the money. And in fact, let me change my attitude. Let me change it. Because I'm falling into the same trap of thinking these people are authorized to make those decisions and enforce it against Jamaican people. Because I say enforce it. Because where do you think they're going to get the money from? They're going to come and take it out of your pocket, your bank account. Every time they tax your account, they're taking your money. Every time that you buy groceries in the store and the GCT go up, you're paying you're paying the money for all of that mess. So let me not embrace without realizing that I am also now saying to people that these people have the power to do what they're doing. They don't. Jamaicans must start asserting themselves. Jamaicans, we must start asserting ourselves. I am Jamaican. And we shouldn't take this nonsense. So let's just stop talking about we hope the Prime Minister or the MPs pull back the money. Or we hope they do this as if they're doing us a favor. Assert yourself. Assert ourselves. We are the people that have the power. We are the people in charge. These people work for us. So the argument that we should be putting out there is not begging these people or the actions we should be taking, not begging them for nothing. We're telling them no, you're not going to get this pay. Because if you take this pay, we're going to shut this country down. And we're going to tell you you need to resign or retire because we have no confidence in you. What people in England do when the government has lost the confidence of the people or their own MPs? They resign. Not in Jamaica. They rip off the country. They rip off people. They fail to perform. They ruin the country. And yet, regardless of what they're doing, they're sitting there and do whatever they want to do until the next election. We just re-engage them, put them back into power because we don't have anybody else to replace them. Why? Because they have this political system set up, a political party that restricts the kind of candidates we deserve. People who really are dedicated to building a country don't want to be associated with a political party or political parties that have the history that these people have, that have the performance that these people have, that are engaged in all kind of criminal activity, whether covertly or overtly. They sit there and allow all these criminal activities to continue, undermining the nation, destroying people's lives. Decent people don't want to fall into that trap. And as a result of that, you don't find people running elections or getting involved with elections because it's so corrupt and dirty. Ultimately, the problem lies with us recognizing that we must organize the community at the grassroots level. We must educate them people up in the country, those people living in the ghettos or in these quote unquote garrison communities. Educate them to let them know this is unacceptable. You must start playing a responsible role in how your country is run. Because guess what? We're not going to put up with the foolishness anymore. We're going to come down and dismantle all them garrison communities. Just like how we're going to dismantle these political parties that were founded and established through violence. And we've been maintaining them. And we know what's going on. Uh, well, let me not say we know, because a lot of Jamaicans don't really know historically what these political parties have done to this country, have done to people. They don't know. And that's why it's important that one of the functions of the next constitution is to have an educational body or division set up permanently, not only to deal with formal education and schools and that, but to develop policy that we educate the people and inform them about every goddamn thing that's happening in your country. There is no not called secret discussions or secret negotiations with government behind closed doors. Everything that the people you're in the house that the people elected you to work on, every word you say must be recorded and then replayed or sent out and disseminated. Looking forward, disseminated. It must be sent out to everybody. So just like I want to sit down and listen to racehorse or listen to all the gossip on social media, we establish a forum, a platform where it is mandated in the Constitution that the government must put a microphone in every meeting them having, not care with international people or local people. A microphone must be there that's played live for every discussion. Everything the Prime Minister said, every minister that's in government, everything him said is broadcast in real time. And we make it a regular, what you call it, reality program that people can listen into. So instead of just wasting our time and listening to all the nonsense that's out there, a whole bunch of us spend most of our time, our lives, listening to gossip and foolishness rather than paying attention to what is going to affect their lives. So one of the things in the new constitution is that we must insist that we have um, a division that deals with communication and education, with a clause in there that the government must inform the people of everything they do, did, discuss, put it online, put it in multiple languages if you have to, but give access to anybody, and I'm talking anybody, local, international, it no matter. Because governments in Jamaica are playing this game about national security and secret this and secret that. What kind of secret Jamaica can have? Against whom? And with whom? We don't need no secrets with the United States. We don't need no secrets between us and Britain. We don't need no secrets between us and China. We don't need no secrets between us and any African nation. We need open dialogue, informed communication that goes straight to the people. On an island this small, we're all part and parcel of whatever is going to happen to the country. And we must therefore have the information to make educated and informed decisions. So this whole idea of government sitting in a room and having discussions and come out and slap people in the face and throw stuff in the face of the people and saying, this is what we decide and this is what's going to happen. And we don't care what you think. And I've always mentioned that one of the most offensive things I've seen is the selling of our sovereignty. When I think it was under the former government, the PNP, I think it was Peter Phillips, signed some agreement that the United States can come into our waters and pick up whosoever they want. Or close to that. I have nothing against the United States. I have nothing against the United States wants to protect their borders. But I have a problem with the whole idea of a sovereign country selling themselves cheap and not taking the responsibility of managing or governing their own territorial waters or air or territory, period. We shouldn't want the US to come in and monitor, regulate, and in our waters and doing what they want in our waters. We shouldn't allow England to do it. We shouldn't allow Russia to do it. We shouldn't allow the Cubans to do it. We shouldn't allow anybody, period. That's what a sovereign country is all about. So it's not about the US wanting to protect the borders. I had no problem with that. But we must have protocol where we respect sovereignty. And part of our responsibility as a people is to take responsibility for our waters. If people are in our waters committing crimes, we catch them, we process them, and if they fall within the framework of a treaty that extradite them and the US want them, then we go through that process. And it shouldn't be at our expense. If the US wants to extradite people to the US, we should set up a system of governance that US send in their law enforcement people. They go through a judicial process. They review it here, we review it, and if it falls within the framework of a treaty that exists and it's a just treaty, then yeah, we turn them over. But we can't just have a minister or government signing a paper because him feel like, yeah, we're going to send out this guy without any kind of process to determine is he really guilty of this crime? Have we really come to the conclusion that he committed these offenses? Because he's in our territory, he's in our waters. And those are the things we need to address. So, again, we're talking about the Constitution. And I hope you're getting the picture that I'm painting. It's not just about a salary, it's not just about getting somebody to say, oh, you're not prime minister again, you're not president. It's about understanding and putting in place the responsibility that these people will have. How do we define that office? We have to clearly define the office of that chief executive, that servant. In fact, I must come out of this whole executive thing, our master, our minister. We must come up with a terminology that reflects who we are and what we want. And if the terminologies used in other countries don't fit the job description of this person, then we need to come up with something that describes it. So, for example, when we do our next constitution, one of the first things the Constitution should declare is that the Constitution is a contract and agreement between the people of Jamaica in majority and the minority. But it's a contract between the people, individuals within the country, a sovereign nation that states that as long as you live and function in accordance to the Constitution and the people now in mass will protect you as an individual. That's one of the first things. And it must also state that within this Constitution, there can be no ambiguous language, no confusing language, no complex languages or statements or sentences that an ordinary person, quote unquote, uneducated, cannot understand. The language of the Constitution must be so simple that when one reads it, there is no confusion about what it's saying or what it means. And I'm stressing that because this is the game they play with government and law. Because they pass laws and they write these laws in all these quote unquote deliberately sophisticated languages with loopholes and ambiguities. And then we go into courts and the judges use that and the lawyers use that to undermine our judicial process and take people's rights. No judge, no politician, no law enforcement agent should have the right to interpret a law. A law is written in the Constitution, it's voted on in the Constitution, and we put in the Constitution if a law is to be changed, we have to have committees that go and review the law, do an audit of the law, meaning what effects did it have? Is it effective? Is it illegal according to people's fundamental rights and freedom? We have a community, a working committee within Parliament or the government, separate that now studies this, votes on it, and then before it becomes law, it must be voted on by the people. And how are we going to get that done? Every 5 years, when we have an election, a general election, all those things are placed on a ballot, just like they do in the US. They put it on a ballot and the people vote. So, for example, in certain parts of the United States, there were government officials and politicians who had their own agenda that says, "Oh, we're never going to legalize marijuana," and they were locking up people. People had it put on the ballot, they voted on it, and said, "Well, guess what? You don't want to do it, but this is what the people want. So we're not going to send people to prison for marijuana again." And even if the federal government didn't change that, doesn't change it, because the vote is an independent sovereign state. And I remind you again that each state in the United States is a sovereign state. That by treaty they formed a federal republic. And that's why you have the federal government having the responsibility of protecting all these states and having influence. So that the fact is, the people voted though, and that's what I'm saying. So an independent country of Jamaica should have people voting on every law, and that's put into effect in Jamaica. And this way, we don't have people saying only a minority of people voted on this. Only the handful of politicians and the prime minister is self-serving. Only 38% of the population want this when the majority of people don't. And so we vote on those things. So this whole idea that it's so sophisticated and difficult to be done is a whole farce. It's language that's put out there to confuse people and scare people. You can play a role. So in a general election now, between this new constitution and the next election, we educate our people. We have programs in school that we call civics. We used to teach civics at one time. So we go back to that. I'm start teaching kids in school civics. Just like in the United States, you have young kids going to school, they get up and they recite the pledge. Because that's building loyalty to your country and to your flag, not to some man that's elected. And we're not talking about there are Christians out there who talk about oh graven images and you're worshiping this. It has nothing to do with that. Let's get out of that foolish nonsense. Whosoever telling you that is full of S themselves. What you're doing when you have children growing up and they're in school and you're teaching them civics as simple as it is by saying the pledge and emphasizing the importance of your dedication to this place that's your home. It's simply saying, guess what? This is yours, you know. And when you see that flag, it represents you. It don't represent no prime minister or some minister of government. It represents you who are the people in the country. And when you see it, you should have the confidence to know that you're protected when you see or you're involved in a country, in your own country, under that. And we start teaching them. We teach them the importance of them making decisions that help the country. I remember when I was in school, and this is part of the whole political culture. We actually used to have days when we would have what we call cleanup days. And classes would go out. Sometimes a Thursday, sometimes a Friday. And that day, we would clean the schoolyard. We would weed, clean, all of that. And we would start piling all the rubbish and rubble on piles. And you know what used to happen? I remember competition was established. And though we didn't understand the danger of that competition then, is that one group of persons, whether they were JLP or not, these are kids. They didn't know anything about being JLP or PNP from that dedicated position. But for the game, they say, oh, you're JLP today and you're PNP today, and we're going to have a competition. And they would start building these fires and burning, and then some would run down and start throwing stuff and hitting other people, and it was playing around. But it was inciting these kids to grow up to be conscious of their politics and conscious of which side they're going to fall on. And so we bred a population or a nation that is now in trouble because of mistakes like that. So what we want to do is actually inculcate within the curriculum of every institution, and I mean every institution, that we don't stop teaching our people civics from kindergarten all the way to the university, reminding them of the importance of them playing a role in preserving their country and their economy and their sovereignty. And so people like that now will come out and say, you know what, I'm going to vote. I'm going to play a role. I'm going to decide whether we want this to happen or not. And then we structure our constitution and our operational structure of that constitution and the government to say to people, every law that's going to be passed by this country will be voted on by the people, the majority of people. That's how you get participation. That's how you get involvement. And so people start from the grassroots level now to start selecting who they want to be their representative. Because we're educating people say, stop, vote for this person because him come in and him empower himself, him family rich, them live abroad, them money abroad. And then you have to pay all these taxes. And if you don't pay the taxes, whatever land you inherited from your people, they're coming to take it because they say you're not paying no tax. And they say you're not paying any taxes and insult because everything you buy, whether it's food, transportation, everything you're paying taxes when you pay a general consumption tax. And so we must make a decision now. Are we going to continue this oppressive system of having personal taxation and everybody in the nation is being forced to pay a general consumption tax, which was the whole concept behind a GCT, you know. It was the idea of let's depart from taxing people and ripping them off of their property. And so we have a general consumption tax that you pay taxes on everything that you buy or you import. That was the original concept behind it. So they went in now, and these people are elected, and they keep ripping the country off. Money is being missing, and so they come up now with other quote unquote creative taxation. And I remember, you know, I keep saying it, I remember the days when the US actually sent down people to advise the Jamaica government to create taxation. Meaning coming up with ways to say it's not taxation, you know, but we're going to get money out of you for one thing or the other. So we start paying increased fees for tickets. We start paying increased fees for this, for that, and then this overall continual threatening of the people. If you don't do this, we're going to lock you up. Give 6 months and $10,000. Who give the right to anybody for going to government and keep threatening people? Citizens, turning them into criminals, you know, then threatening them with prison. One of the fundamental issues, sorry, I have with how we govern in this country. Every law they pass, they attach some connotation or stipulation that the option is or no option. You're going to pay X or we send you to prison. You're going to pay Y or we send you to prison. You can't pay a bill. Guess what? They have debtors court. We're going to send you to prison. Now, other civilized countries, like the United States, and we're going to keep quoting the United States because it's our biggest example of stuff we need to look at and pick from their activities what we want in our constitution and what we don't want. We don't have to take everything. But we look at the good things and we take it. And we look at stuff in the constitution, and again, this is state by state. But we look at stuff like if a person can't pay a bill, why are you going to send them to prison? kind of punishment is that? A person's business fail and you ban them for life from open another business. You know that happen that's actually in the laws in Jamaica. A person form or file bankruptcy, you can't open another business legally in Jamaica. I don't know if they're changing that because I know they were working on it. That's an oppressive society. So in short, where failure is rewarded in other countries because most businesses or most entrepreneurs are successful business people. They started in business, they fail, they move on. And so you construct your economy to allow that to happen. Because there are the fundamental issues now that your actions in creating criminals and stopping them from making progress is that you're also putting a burden on the rest of the people. Because when you tell a person that they can't open another business because they filed bankruptcy, it is none of your business in the first place. Because in other countries, when a country allow a person to file bankruptcy, it's saying to the rest of the people out there, they tried, they were unsuccessful in this business, they can't afford to pay back the debt. So the government makes laws to say they can write off this debt. The government actually gives them credit for whatever they invested and lost. Some of them get tax returns for the loss because it's not about punishing people. It's about rewarding people to say they tried, they failed, but we shouldn't punish them for it. So we're going to give them an opportunity to reorganize themselves. And as I've heard people that, oh, we go wheel and come back, or something I saw. I hear that terminology the other day. They go wheel and come back. They go back and restart another business. And this time they're successful. If it's somebody committing fraud, no, that's a different matter. And that's why laws in the US, when it comes to bankruptcy, if they know it's fraud, you go out and you take people's money and you just close down and think it's okay. No, that's fraud. But again, we are educated and sophisticated enough to understand that we implement policy and programs that exist in other economies and we embed them in our constitution. So we get away from this mentality of imprisonment and incarcerating people, which is a policy and program that came out of colonialism and slavery. Straight out. And so we continue it. Just like a political system. The first constitution we got, we never had a say in it. And amendments were made, I think, in 2011 or somewhere around there. But again, was it even made legally according to the constitution? That said, our goal now is to change the constitution. So we build a country that serves the people of Jamaica and its guests and its visitors. We develop a constitution where we have no loyalty as to any other nation out there. We have no hostility to any other nation out there. So we remain non aligned, independent, and so we're friends with everybody. And so there are no reasons for us to have secret meetings with a foreign power. And next thing you know, we end up in wars or kind of laws that are oppressive and not in keeping with our sovereignty. We don't want no secrets. So, in short, these are the things we must be looking at discussing. And people who are involved in the whole concept of building a strong economy, one in which people know we're intelligent people and we're not just people who desperate and fall prey to everybody else, is that we're going to come up with solutions that fix the things that we've been suffering as a people. So again, I've indicated that we don't just adopt a system that exists and just change from prime minister to president and fix the rest of stuff. First of all, the president has no other responsibility than reporting to the Jamaican people and overseeing parliament and reporting what's happening down there to the Jamaican people. He's a servant of the people. He's representing the people in terms of the services and going down and monitoring and giving oversight on the rest of the people in the government. He's not there to develop policy. He's not there to select anybody. He's not there to appoint anybody. His role is to work for the people. And since we have an elected members of parliament down there who are supposed to review, make decisions, make policy, Those are the people who make policy. The Prime Minister in this new constitution, whatever he's called, has no role in that whatsoever. So his role is to see what's going on down there. Don't get involved with dictating anything to them. Just report to the nation because we've already in this new constitution set up bodies that will report to the people so that actions can be taken. Within the constitution, penalties and consequences for performance of these people down there. Put in the constitution that they can't pass any laws as a finality without it being voted on at a general election by the people. Things like that, simple things. Change up how Europeans dump their system on us and then put us against each other. I want to thank you. Um, this is a big thing. And the other thing I want to say is we need to organize. So as I said to you earlier, people in the diaspora, we need to organize. We have to stop saying, and I used to be saying it, the Jamaicans at home need to step up. Yes, they need to. But sometimes people need to see leadership. They need to see people who are willing to stand up. I'm not asking anybody to take any life threatening action or sacrifice. Because this whole idea about political parties and their strength is only in our own neglect. That's where the strength is. We neglect our responsibility. Once we decide to dismantle all of them, the garrison communities, we improve our country and it can be done. We know how to perform. These things didn't just evolve on their own. From all recollection of some of the discussions I've been hearing over the last couple of days, is that these garrison communities were actually deliberately built. And if we know they were deliberately built, the structure, we can dismantle it. We can reverse engineer it. And so we can take those people down there who are suffering and caught up in this never ending cycle of violence and poverty. We can fix the business to them so they come out of that. We can fix the housing crisis without oppressing people through taxation. We can. We can create a vibrant economy by allowing people to be as educated as a primary responsibility of the government. Education should be the top of the list of any government responsibility. Healthcare. Because if you have a population that's educated and healthy, then they can use their health to create. Because now you're thinking clear, you're not stressed about where you're going to get the next meal. You understand programs and policies. You can articulate matters and issues. You can now sit down and decide you want to invest in your economy by opening a business. If you're working for an entity, when you go to work, you're the most productive because you understand if you build this entity, it's going to strengthen your economy. If these entities produce for the economy, it means that the economy is doing well. It means we can reverse this whole inflationary trend where you're forced to pay taxes out of what little money you're making or what a lot of money you're making because we didn't come on the planet to go pay taxes. There's this concept that there are two things you must do in life: pay taxes and die. That's not true. That's what's put in our head. People weren't brought on the planet to pay taxes to empower some people, and the rest of us suffer. Again, let's get together. All you bloggers out there who are discussing these issues, understand that we have to find a way to get people involved. And it was suggested last night on the program I heard that, and the gentleman said, I don't expect to be discussing everything in an open forum. No, I am submitting and saying to all those bloggers and people who are out there thinking and working towards a better country, there is no secret. There are no secret meetings. There are no group or cartel or body getting together in private settings to discuss anything about the Constitution and what's going to run this country. everything you discuss, like I said to you before, like in government, everything they discuss, a mic must be in the room, recorded, and then played back to the rest of the people so they know what's going on in their country. These people work for us. So if we're now sitting and saying we need transparency in government, then we have to be transparent in what we're suggesting is going into the Constitution. There are no secrets because once the Constitution is formed, everybody's going to be exposed to it. So everybody that is mature and have a right to participate should participate, even if it means listening. Because when they listen and they understand and it comes to going to that referendum and voting, they know what they're voting for. So there is nothing that should be contemplated to go into any secret meetings. Set up your forum. You've realized the strength behind having your blogs, having your YouTube sessions, and spilling everything, spilling the beans to everybody who wants to listen, who can listen, and who can be encouraged to share because your listeners are coming and sharing it with other people. No secrets. Get away from this. This is how you have countries getting themselves into big trouble, especially small nations. What kind of secrets we have? We're go into some room and discuss what the Constitution should entail. That's the very thing we're fighting now. Secrets that this got us in the first place. When the first Constitution was done, how many of the people of Jamaica even had a say in it? England just sent it down and said, vote on it. Secrets. We don't need any secrets. So this idea that bloggers should get together, and it was on the program with Mr. Radigan, or Ratican. Forgive me if I didn't get it right. It's on a program that the well educated, whether through experience or formally educated historian that was talking suggested that, well, we won't be talking about everything online. No, you need to talk to everything online because if you're going in secret behind the door, it means it might be something that's not good for us. It might be something that is going to be creating an issue with quote unquote national security measures and issues. And you know what they're doing with that already. We don't want any of that foolishness. We don't want any international agency or governments to say what they're discussing in secret. And then we're not approving of that secret. 'Cause you're getting the information, and next thing you have a kind of civil war going on again, like that happened in the 70s. Yeah, we had a civil war. And based on what I heard, we've been having a civil war going on from 1940 something. I think the gentleman said 1943 or 46, when political leaders stood up in the square in downtown Kingston and said, "Me go and go up so for me people them and for me go and you go and see what happens." Whether those reports are accurate or not, the point I'm making is we don't want to embark on any kind of discussions around where this nation is going in secret. I have never believed in secret societies or secret organizations. That's why I never became a member of any lodge movement or Knights Templar or Freemasons. Fine, you want to keep your secrets? Those are private businesses or private activity. When it comes to the country and the population, no secrets. And in fact, we need to address certain of those organizations who have this affiliation that they have these secrets and they have their membership and they have terminologies like they can't rule against their own members, but yet they're in court. Yeah, a whole bunch of people in court and politicians belong to the lodge, as they say, or what you call it, Freemasons. And they have their program and policy. They can't judge their brother. Fine, I don't have a problem with that. But then you should restrict yourself from going into areas that you must deal with the population. And if your brother is a Freemason or a lodge member or a Knights Templar or some other secret society, then when that person comes in front of the court, you should recuse yourself. Because remember, we need to spend a whole session, or not session, sessions on discussing cleaning up the judiciary. But that's one of the fundamental problems with the judiciary now, is that we have these secret society members who are occupying places in places that belong to the state, belong to the people, and then make decisions that's beneficial to their members but harmful to the nation. And we need to address it. Now, when a hostile, as I said, to any organization that does well, because a lot of these organizations empower their members. But what we're saying is, don't take it to a level where you're sacrificing the nation because of your members by you sitting in judgment over a member, and then your policy that you swear to is that you can't judge a member, so you let him go. And believe it or not, I know Freemasons in the United States, and that's how I know about some of the stuff. In fact, a couple of them taught me a few things. All right, and I know it happens, but we need to get away from that. So you have good things about you, but there are certain things that we need to ensure that it doesn't spill over into people's business and people's affairs. So we have to look at the judiciary. I want to thank you. Again, let's pay attention. Let's participate. Let's start pushing this thing. Let's say we're going to push. We're going to get discussions online. Whether you're blogging or not now, let's create forums and get on there. And if 10,000 people on there, let's have discussions. Let's then vote on, but don't just make comments. Let's vote on issues online. Let's negotiate with these platforms to say we want to set up a petition or a vote, and the people who come on those publicized platforms listen to discussions, then vote on issues. Then we put those issues together and the voting and what people want and say, then we present it in a mass town hall meeting at the community level. We expose everybody to it, and so that we get and drive the point home that this is all inclusive. Everybody's participating. We have technology now. We don't have to wait on any motorcade to drive to the country. Everybody have a cell phone. Everybody can click on that cell phone, listen to the issues, and make a vote. Organizing is important. But I need resources to ensure that everybody is involved. And we don't have to go tax people for that. Yeah, government should put some money out for that specific education. But those of us who are out there can also create committees that raise cash that doesn't go into our pockets. We want this thing to be clean. Remember, we're dealing with corrupt people. And those funds are used to educate people, send information, set up processes that we know we're reaching people. Teaching civics, regenerate the whole idea about civics and parliament and government. Teaching people about this new constitution and what we want in there, having there, or agreed that we want in there. And the majority of people who are voting have the option to say, we're going to vote for this or we're not going to vote for it. Thank you. Have a good one. Looking forward to some further discussions around this. And let's build our country. Let's build our people. Because ultimately, helping to stabilize the world. Thank you. Have a great one.